I'd like to call the school board meeting to order. If we please could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Superintendent, points of pride, please.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Just a couple of points of pride tonight, and I'm going to beg your pardon for my raspy voice, just getting over a cold. At Dublin Consolidated School, staff and students made soups for our thankful luncheon at the end of November. Many of the families were able to join them for lunch and enjoyed spending that time together. At Greenfield Elementary School, pre-K through third grade students all had the chance to explore coding with Dave DeWitt. Students quickly understood how to create the program and then sent the robot along the correct path. Our fourth grade students learned about 3D printing and will have their original 3D printing artwork used to create a 3D display. All students were complimented by Mr. DeWitt on their attention and how quickly they understood the technology. At Peterborough Elementary School on Tuesday, November 21st, PES held its annual turkey trot. Families were invited to participate with their children. The trot was not meant to be competitive, rather it was fun and together time to get some fresh air and exercise to support the community. Also, PES held a community clothing drive during the month of November. They then held a free clothing shop on Saturday, December 2nd at PES for the greater Peterborough community. At Temple Elementary School, Temple has reestablished the community lunch. Every first Friday of the month, families and community members are invited to connect with the school for lunch, laughter, and conversation. Lunch starts at 12:30, so please feel free to bring your own sandwich. At Conval High School, the ATC has 55 plus entries into this year's New Hampshire Scholastic Arts Award competition, including 2 senior portfolios. And Zoe Page was named the New Hampshire JV Coach of the Year for girls soccer. At SMS, the Exploring Horizons program participated in the Holiday Trees in Peterborough last weekend, and SMS won first place for the People's Choice for their favorite children's tree. And just a reminder that SMS's winter concert is at 6:30 p.m. on December 12th. Those are our points of pride.
Thank you. Approval of the manifest.
I certified the manifest listed below totaling $1,983,416.76 have been reviewed by me and found to be proper charges against the Katuka Valley School District for goods or services received and have been properly processed prior to their submittal to the school board.
I move that we approve the manifest.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions for board members? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? None. Next part of our agenda is for public comment. We ask the public if you want to share your thoughts with the board. We have 2 minutes. There's a mic in the front. If you come forward, please push the button so the little green light comes on so that we can hear you. And we allow the public to bring comments to the board for 2 minutes. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to the board? Yes, Mark. Please give us your name and your town you're from, please.
Good evening. My name is Penelope Billigus. I live in Peterborough. I have a freshman at Conval and a 6th grader at SMS. Both of my children have attended our public schools since kindergarten. And while they have both excelled at school, I did notice an increased strain on them once they made the transition to middle school. Their challenges stem directly from the early start time, which began in 5th grade. Research tells us that puberty changes our children's circadian rhythms and that they start to exist in a jet lag sort of state where their Body, sleep, and wake cycles shift so that it's more difficult to rise early. I have observed this firsthand and see that many of their friends struggle with this too. Despite the great amount of evidence supporting a later start time for older children, our district has not yet found a way to make that change a reality. It is easy to take the path of least resistance and resist change. However, common sense and research-based evidence tell us that we should find a way to make a later start time happen for older students. I'm here tonight to advocate both for students and staff in our district. Currently, our high school and middle school start times are significantly earlier than the 8:30 start time recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. According to their website, delaying school start times is an effective countermeasure to chronic sleep loss and has a wide range of potential benefits to students with regard to physical and mental health, safety, and academic achievement. Teachers and staff in our district also deal with issues related to the early start time. Not all of them live in town and have the addition of a commute to their already early start. Other local districts, namely Keene and Amherst, have implemented a later start time for older kids. It is possible that offering a later start time in our district could improve teacher retention and an increased sense of well-being among the staff. If our goal in this district is to have healthy, well-adjusted, academically successful children, I feel that we should look to those who have done the research and follow their advice. Conval has the advantage of being has the advantage of being a supportive, creative community, and I strongly believe that we can work together to make a later start time a reality. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening. My name's Denise Zimmer. I'm from Peterborough. Over the past few meetings, we've heard about the circadian rhythm shift during adolescence and how a later start time would be beneficial to our students. I understand this issue has a history. It was actually 6 years ago when I first learned about the sleep shift from another Conval Parents Group's education initiative. I understand that the original attempt at a solution, which required a substantial cost, did not pass on the ballot. However, it is also my understanding, regardless of that vote, our community now supports a later start time. In fact, according to the Prismatic survey, it's something we can actually agree on. 75% of respondents agreed. If the research shows that a later start time for Conval High School would benefit those students, then it would be good for Conval to do that. Our students are not being lazy or stubborn. They're going through a biological shift that doesn't allow them to feel tired until around 11 p.m. Yet we're in the 10% of schools that start before 7:30 a.m. This burden of early start time doesn't allow even the most responsible, diligent students to get enough sleep. After consulting with her doctor and therapist, my 5th grader actually wakes up at 4:30 a.m. on her own accord to feel awake and ready to learn by the time she arrives for school. Her provider only recommended allowing her to wake early because she's in bed by 8, asleep by 8:30 each night, and suffers from anxiety-induced sleepwalking. We already worry about this, but when she hits puberty and is unable to fall asleep at 8, I'm not sure what we'll do. I want to leave you with a copy of a case study where there's another community in Maine came together to overcome the logistical challenges of shifting school start time. I can stop there, but thank you.
Jesse Markham, Dublin. I am here tonight to let you know that I feel helpless.
It's an Army trained operator over there.
So I'm here tonight to let you know that I feel helpless. I started attending board meetings several years ago when I heard rumors of consolidation, and despite my concerns, my questions, I've been continually lectured on the need to do something without ever being told why something needs to be done, beyond some vague and unspecified references to savings or opportunity. I've also been reassured countlessly that no decision has been made. Yet here we are on the precipice of a decision, and every indication suggests that I was right to be concerned from the get-go. I feel helpless because despite staying informed, being engaged, and asking questions, not once has anyone asked me what I want. And I don't mean answering some loaded or leading questions in a survey. And I certainly don't mean plunking tokens or tickets into a box as though I was choosing a prize at a carnival. Since it seems apparent that no one is going to ask me what I want, I'm going to have to do so without being asked. And I hope that other community members will feel compelled to do the same in the upcoming weeks. The short is, I want our elementary schools to remain open, all of them. Our children will spend the rest of their lives as numbers on someone's spreadsheet, but here in this district, our students have the opportunity to be more. They have the opportunity to attend in an intimate school that's deeply embedded in their town and in their community. They have an opportunity to stand out in a way that everyone can recognize them and be proud of them instead of being forgotten in the anonymity of a crowd. Our small schools are a promise to our children that we value them and they are deserving of more than an industrial model of education. Our small schools are a gift to the next generation that I believe we should keep giving. Whatever actions the board takes in the upcoming weeks, I'm going to ask you to please not hide behind this report, whatever it is. Instead, I ask you and I implore you to do one thing above all else, to please start listening to your community. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the board at this point? Please come forward.
My name is Carrie Higley, and I'm from Dublin. I was distressed and angered by the article published in the Monadnock Ledger Transcript on December 1st regarding the recommended closures of the elementary schools in Dublin, Francistown, Temple, and Bennington. But maybe angered isn't the right word. I am outraged. I am outraged at the expense and time that has gone into attempting to close these schools. Schools that are not only places of learning and development for children, but also places which are essentially the heartbeats of each community. Inside of these buildings, children are taught to love learning, to believe in themselves, to show others with differences compassion and empathy. Friendships are made here, sometimes lifelong friendships. These small schools also help to foster friendships between adults. I hope we can all reflect on how difficult it can be to make new friends once one becomes an adult and moves to a new town. In these schools, the teachers see everything. They know when a child is struggling academically, socially, or at home. The principals and teachers know exactly who they can reach out to for help, whether the help is professional or selecting someone from their network of parents and community members who can step up and supply the child and/or family with whatever it is that they need. I have seen this in action countless times at DCS. Will something like this happen within larger schools with larger classes? No, I don't think it will. I am outraged at the clearly biased data that has been presented, specifically the data on per pupil cost at the elementary schools that has so obviously been skewed by those schools which host a pre-K. Do not think that it has been overlooked that the schools that were expressly denied a pre-K are the ones on the chopping block. DCS in particular was denied. This just underscores to us, the parents and concerned residents of towns at risk of losing their schools, that these closures have been long in the planning. I am outraged at the implication that tax money will be saved and go back to taxpayers, and make no mistake, that is what many believe, when we all know that this is unlikely to happen. With the influx of children, the remaining schools will need to hire teachers, bus drivers, paras, and will more likely than not need building refurbishments.
Kimberly Markham, Dublin. I am outraged at the fact that at no time has Prismatic or the board supplied taxpayers or survey takers with sources supporting the evidence they have put forward, and therefore are not held accountable for any errors in information. One glaring error was the inaccurate student enrollment number for DCS provided within the sticky note portion of the survey. Where did this number come from? I don't know, because there was no source embedded within the survey that would allow us, the taxpayers, survey takers, and voters, to find out. From what year were the test score averages taken for DCS and the other schools? Again, I cannot answer that because the sources have not been cited. That's not transparency. it feels like distrust and purposeful withholding of information. I'm outraged at the total misinformation perpetrated by Prismatic in the Ledger article. Children who are a bit different, what does that even mean, by the way? Do not do better in larger class sizes. Study after study has been done since the first and arguably most robust STAR program in 1985, which proves that all children, no matter what their differences, thrive in small class environments. Again, this information is just thrown out into the community with no source, and this time with absolutely no basis in fact. And finally, I am outraged that the importance of the social capital that these schools bring to their communities in particular, and to the Conval district in general, is being ignored. For those unfamiliar with the term, Oxford Languages defines social capital as the networks of relationships among people who live and work in a particular society, enabling society to function efficiently. It isn't the work of the district that allows these small schools in Dublin a couple sentences. Thank you. Francistown, Temple, and Bennington to become the soul of the towns and function so efficiently. It is the principals, the teachers, the parers, the secretaries, the parents, the community members, and the children themselves who breathe life into them because we love them. Closing these small schools and pushing these children into other schools with bigger class sizes will break the web, the social capital network that has been carefully and lovingly nurtured in each town. Our children's teachers and communities do not deserve this. Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak?
My name is Morgan Jadis, and this is Ross Jadis. We live in Dublin, New Hampshire. My son was pretty concerned about hearing the consolidating of the schools, and is much more organized than I am, so I'm going to let him take over.
My mom and my dad was a third grade teacher, so I'm going to be the third grade teacher too. I don't want teachers to lose their jobs because they're kind, really kind.
Anything else? I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was very brave of you.
Is there anyone else in the public? All right.
I am Laura Mafair from Francistown, and on the reconfiguration, I would like to speak to the community involvement. In reading the RFP for the project, community involvement seemed to be a priority. However, actions seem to be speak otherwise. Yes, there was a meeting in each of the towns. Our Francistown meeting was scheduled the same day as the GBS open house, causing families that are already short on time to have to make a decision whether to choose the open house or to involve our town meeting. The meetings were not a back and forth engagement, but rather a presentation of seemingly biased questions and post-it notes. There have been online surveys, and many of them the same seemingly biased questions, and the online forum that was confusing and frustrating to many who tried to participate. We kept hearing that there would be a time for community to come together for a discussion. The time has come on December 11th for the community forum, and when the agenda was presented, it showed that there's a whopping 35 minutes for Q&A portion. 35 minutes for the entire district to ask questions and get responses on a project that's been going on for months. Why rush this process? Why not give the community actual time to ask questions and get meaningful, thoughtful responses? Community buy-in truly requires community input. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak to the board? All right, thank you. At this point, oops, I'm sorry. I may.
Hi, I'm May Clark from Dublin. I just have a few questions as a result of the recommendation by Prismatic that I hope will be answered. I haven't had any exposure to any answers of any questions that have come up in this whole process. So I'm really hoping that some of these questions will be answered possibly at the forum or I don't know, but somewhere. So my first question is $2.5 million. It sounds like a lot. It sounds like a really great thing. And I'm wondering what exactly is included in that $2.5 million. How many, we know that the teachers and staff is the biggest proportion of the budget. How many teaching positions are part of this $2.5 million? And what else is included in that? And have additional costs been added in? So, for example, the receiving schools presumably will need some work to be receiving any number of children should that happen. Transportation costs, I suppose there will be some reduction, but there will also be some increase. And as a sidebar to that question about transportation, I understand at least in Dublin that there used to be 2 bus routes, now there's 1 because the bus company can't find drivers. So one of my big concerns about possible consolidation has been the fact that many of our kids in Dublin have hour-long bus rides already. And if they're being bused now to a different town, it's just going to be longer. I don't know what can be done about finding more drivers and more bus routes, and I don't know if those costs have been figured in.
May, that's 2 minutes.
Oh, that's 2 minutes already? Oh, man, quick then. Just a couple of questions, more questions. Maintenance of closed buildings, is that included? I would love to have a ballpark idea of what the
May,
reduction you need me to stop.
no. The board can give you permission to give more time if you need it, but if you finished your questions, you can always send the questions forward too.
I think I can very quickly say what my other 2 questions are.
Board, just give me a thumbs up.
Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. I would really appreciate a ballpark idea of what kind of savings we're talking on individual tax bills, because $2.5 million is impressive. But when I did my little figuring, it didn't come out to be enough money to be worth tearing the heart out of 4 towns. And yeah, the others are sort of not as relevant.
You always send them forward to, May, you can always send those forward. You can always send them forward to the superintendent.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from the community? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move to student representative. Lucy?
Okay. It's been a busy week at Conval. On Saturday, we had the craft fair, and the class of 2024 raised over $4,000. And this was going towards our senior trip and prom. And we have over 70 kids signed up for our senior trip, which is to Montreal, which is exciting. And then the senior class is also hosting a movie night on the 21st of December in the mini gym. We did this fall too. Last week there was the first Alice drill, which was the enhanced lockdown. There was kind of a conversation and task before, kind of going over what would happen, and then that day we did the active drill and then spent the rest of the time in class debriefing that, and overall it went really well. The winter sports season is starting. There's a wrestling meet on Wednesday at 6 p.m., girls basketball at 7 p.m., and spirit, and then swimming on Friday. So, yep.
Thank you, Lucy. And again, remember, at your pleasure, if you want to leave, feel free to do that. Selectmen Advisory. Alan?
We had a selectmen advisory committee meeting last week. And first discussion item, which would be natural, was on consolidation and reconfiguration. And we brought the selectmen up to date as to what our activities were and what our future activities are. Now, the future activities that we have planned is the 11th of the month, we will be having a community forum. And there will be a presentation being done by the president of Prismatic as to what the report contains. The report is out now on the website. As we decided to do that, the report has come out. It is now available for anybody to look at, the whole report, and not just something that, not transcript put on. So you'll have that opportunity. We have the community forum coming up on the 11th, and after that is when the board will get together and we will vote on whether to accept the recommendation and the conclusion or not. And also whether we need a warrant article based on our vote to accept or not accept it. We also talked about after that meeting, we have a special board meeting that will take place after the community forum when we will be doing this information gathering, and we will have it all posted online on the website about what the information is that we got, how our vote took place, and what our vote was. We also discussed the budget, on what's coming up on the budget, and knew that it was a preliminary discussion, so there was no fixed amounts discussed at that point. And we're going to defer that to the next meeting as we discuss all the ramifications of the budget. We also talked about the renovation of the high school and the CTE, which is a project that's undertaken by a consulting firm or an architectural firm, and we're coming up with a recommendation for that and how that will take place. And then we talked about the schedule of the December meetings, because we usually have two Selectmen Advisory Committee meetings a month, and since it is December and there is some vacation time coming up, that how we're going to have those meetings taken care of. That was the Selectmen Advisory.
Any question for board members? Right, consent agenda.
So if there's,
Any questions? The consent agenda? Seeing none? Okay. Calendar, yes.
Second?
We don't.
no, as long as they don't
Yeah.
have any problem.
As
with
long
the
as you don't have any
consent
question, we
agenda.
don't have to approve it under the consent agenda. As long as there's no question, it automatically goes through. We don't have to have approval. We decided that a while ago on the consent agenda. So any questions on the minutes on those two dates? Seeing none, okay. Calendar. Any questions on the calendar?
You mean the resignation of co-curricular
Okay, yep.
personnel?
All right, personnel? Any questions on personnel?
Great, thank you.
Okay. Superintendent's report.
Okay, so I do want to just get some direction because you asked May, who I think has now left, to send questions to me. But where do you want me to forward those questions to the board? Do you want me to forward those questions to Prismatic? Happy to be the pure purveyor of all the questions or collector of all the questions, but want to make sure I'm clear on what you expect me to do with those. Okay, all
Send
right,
them to
thank
Alan.
you. I will send them to Alan. All right, thank you. We have some presentations, but before we do that, I believe at this point we are caught up on school board requests. And you do have a monthly events calendar in your packet. I just want to go over that really quickly before we start the presentation. So you do have December. Today's the 5th. Initially, we were going to have a school board meeting on the 7th. That has been changed. Excuse me. Just so everybody knows, I don't actually have a cold. I had a thing. It's gone. I'm not contagious or anything. Next week, we have the community forum on the 11th. We have a policy committee on the policy committee meeting on the 12th. We have that school board meeting that was originally on the 7th has been moved to the 13th, and we have selectmen's advisory committee on the 14th. We have our regularly scheduled budget and property and school board meeting on the 19th. And on the 22nd, there is a half a day of school, and we break for the holiday recess. Are there any questions about December's calendar before I go into January's? So January on the 2nd, we are right out of the box at a school board meeting on the 2nd with a public hearing on the proposed budget on the 9th with a snow date of the 16th. And we have our regularly scheduled board meeting on the 16th. And right now we have the Selectmen's Advisory Committee meeting on the 25th. So that's where we are right now. Please make sure, for those of you who have regularly scheduled meetings, if you could get those, make sure, double check those dates and times with Brenda. Go ahead, Erin.
Is there a time for the public hearing? It's not on the calendar.
It's 6 o'clock, sorry. Yep, 6 o'clock. All right, I am going to turn this over now to the Blended Learning Leadership team for a presentation. And while they're doing that, I'm also going to hand out this article that was shared from the community member.
Members of our Blended Learning Leadership team are here tonight to share some work that they've been doing that's directly related to our strategic plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Helfried Zersby.
Thank you, Anne. Good evening. My name is Helfried Zersby, and I'm a member of the Blended Learning Leadership team, whose names are listed on the slide before you. We are here this evening to talk to you about the purposeful use of technology in the Conrail School District. And in the course of our presentation, we will touch on the impetus for our work that is rooted in the current district strategic plan. We'll talk about the vision, definition for a thoughtful integration of technology into our classroom, as well as show you pictures of the practice that showcases for you visually the meaningful use of technology to foster student engagement, collaboration, and critical thinking skills. We will then discuss our current work towards adopting a framework for teachers, and finally give you a preview of next steps that we are planning to undertake in the coming months. At the end, there will be time for questions and answers. For the first portion of our presentation, I'm now turning the mic over to Sean Hilliard, who will talk about the context of the strategic plan.
I'd like to take just a moment to touch base with you about both the connection and context of the strategic plan and this work. As you can see from this slide, there was a survey that went out in January of 2022 to staff, parents, and students at the high school level. This went out to ask them how strongly they agreed or disagreed with the focus of our district on integrating technology to improve student learning. You can see that the vast majority agreed or strongly agreed with that, and those percentages went up as the grade levels went up, particularly for the parents. This information, along with other information, made it critical for us to take a look as we developed our strategic plan to make sure there was a priority that did address the purposeful use of technology. So strategic plan priority 1 does talk about both the clear definition and the clear purpose for the purposeful use of technology, along with the need for some type of framework for us to prepare and present to support our teachers in this work as we move forward. I'll now turn it over to Rachel.
I'm going to speak to some of the vision for our technology integration. So the original vision for technology integration focused on preparing our students to succeed in school and beyond through the equitable access to and effective use of technology. This vision further evolved with the adoption and rollout of one-to-one. We were able to move away from the computer lab model or a learning technology model and embrace anytime, anywhere student-centered learning or learning with technology. This also allowed for deeper commitment to equitable resources across the district. One of the action steps in the current strategic plan was to define the term purposeful use of technology. Conval School District's commitment to blended learning is centered on a balance between high quality, face-to-face instruction and technology-enabled learning environments that prepare students for a digitally connected world. We therefore define the purposeful use of technology as the intentional integration of technology into teaching and learning activities in order to improve student engagement, performance, and outcomes. This includes the use of digital tools and resources to support student collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking. This is Emily McCroy.
So the Conval School District provides guided practice, safety measures, guardrails to ensure that the use of digital resources is both purposeful and safe. Teachers and students use digital resources that are compliant with all state and federal regulations, grounded in the learning science research, reviewed for effective teaching practice, graduated by school level, so that's elementary school to high school, and scaffolded to help students build skills and competencies. In elementary school, students start to explore resources in a fun, age-appropriate way and access information to help them learn important skills for the future. Here you can see students collaborating with teachers and each other using technology for a variety of projects. Students use circuit boards and they read and work together, and then they also can bring books to life using technology in elementary school.
At the middle school level, students access technology tools to learn more deeply and routinely collaborate with others in research, project creation, and presentation. You can see a student there familiarizing themselves with Spike robotics programming. Students also use technology purposely, and this can be seen with the interactive whiteboard use, also with media creation, digital media creation, which we can see here in these two photos, as well as programming VEX and Spike robots in the top right and the bottom left. And finally, collaborating using Google Workspace and also video conferencing with experts in the field, seen here in the top left with video conferencing Kevin Skarupa, as well in the bottom right with video conferencing a chemist from Sri Lanka. Here goes back to Helfrey, actually.
At the high school level, students use online resources to independently conduct research, create projects, supplement their own learning, and prepare for college, career, and life after high school. Technology is purposefully integrated into every academic department, from mathematics, which you see right here, to science, English, social studies, health and wellness, music, performing arts, world languages, and of course ATC courses like wood manufacturing, engineering, graphic communications, and robotics. The last image, which is actually an animated GIF, is an illustration of dual use of technology at the high school level. Here students used a real baby infant simulator to track caregiving behavior by the students, which they then reflected upon by creating a video log or video diary. For an overview of our current work and future work, I'm now turning it over to Sarah Hale.
So, once we established the vision and definition, it was clear that we needed a framework that could answer these questions. How do teachers reflect on their practice and student learning outcomes? How do we create a common language around tech integration? What tools exist that would be helpful for teachers? we looked at 4 models or approaches to tech integration. These models do not contradict each other, but they are laid out in different ways, and they vary in their level of detail. So very briefly, I'm going to explain these 4 models. SAMR is our first one. It's an acronym for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. The model shows a progression of steps that tech integration commonly follows. The goal is to move along the steps to expand and deepen tech integration if that tech integration takes education in a transformative direction. Next, we have Triple E. The 3 E's are engage, enhance, and extend. This framework provides teachers with specific questions to help assess the value of the technology that's being used in instruction. They use the questions to score their lessons and determine if the technology that they're using is, in fact, having a positive impact on student learning. It's worth noting that Triple E can reveal a common pitfall in EdTech, the shiny object. A low score on the questionnaire usually indicates that the technology is high in engagement, but falls short when it comes to learning outcomes, relevance, and lasting value. TPACK stands for Technology, Pedagogy, and Content Knowledge, and is illustrated as a Venn diagram. This framework takes a holistic approach to instruction and helps teachers balance these 3 essential elements. Teachers will find themselves somewhere in this framework, identifying their particular strengths and combination of strengths. Pedagogy, content knowledge, and technology are in balance when they meet in the center. And finally, TIM, the last model, stands for Technology Integration Matrix. Teachers use the columns to identify the level of depth of technology integration, and the rows to describe the learning environment that they are creating with technology. TIM is a very thorough framework. There are a lot of resources built in, including specific indicators and examples of tech integration done well.
So for future work, we are going to be communicating and building a shared understanding. We'll be working with administration and staff to communicate and build a shared understanding of the vision and the definition that we have presented you tonight. We also are going to continue to review the 4 models that Sarah presented to determine which one we feel will best meet our needs in supporting teachers and the purposeful use of technology. And then we will bring forward one and recommend for adoption. And then based on our vision, definition, and our adopted model, we're going to identify specific needs so that we can tailor our professional development to the specific needs of our teachers and administrators. And then lastly, we're also going to be working on a communication plan so that we can communicate with all of our stakeholders. I think one of the things we realized during the surveys is that not everyone fully understands how we're using technology in school. And so we need to do a better job of communicating with all the stakeholders about our use of technology. And then you have a copy, the school board members have a copy of this PowerPoint in their drive. We've linked some resources for those of you who want to dig into this deeper. And we are open for questions if anybody has any.
Yes. The 4 evaluative tools that you brought, are you piloting those, or are you looking at, is it individual group? How are you going to determine which tool you want to go with?
Well, one thing that has come out in our initial meetings and poring over this, because on the committee, we've all looked at them and reacted to them, and it was clear that that different tiers of education may favor one over the other, and we're open to that flexibility because, as I said, they don't contradict each other. It's and we have a lot of administrators on our team, teachers, tech people. So we're bringing a lot of different viewpoints to it. So I know that we've used Tim, it's been around for a long time, as a way to start thinking. We're not really using the word evaluative right now. I'd like to use more self-reflective for the teachers because they're helpful that way. But the others, I think, were new to our committee. Well, SAMR has been around for a long time, but Triple E and TPAC are relatively new to us.
Thank you, Sarah. Board members, any other board members have questions, thoughts? Appreciate sharing. I'm looking forward to the tool, and it does sort of make sense that at different levels you might find a tool that's more effective depending upon the grade level. That does make sense. So good. Well, thank you.
Okay, so next I want to introduce the high school scheduling team. They are taking a look at the high school schedule. They've started this work in the fall of 2021. They have dug into what high school schedules look like. And when we say high school schedules, we mean the time and the bell schedule that structures the day. This is not a team that is looking specifically at start or end times. Okay, so I'm going to step away so people can see through my head. And Heather, why don't you guys get started?
All right, good evening. As the high school principal, I'd like to introduce to you the members of the high school schedule committee that are present with us this evening. So we have Carol Young, science teacher and department leader. We have Amanda Haley, school counselor, and Deb Riley, special education administrator, all at Conval. And I just want to reiterate that to note that the work of this committee is really focused on the high school schedule and what that looks like during the day. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ms. Riley.
Good evening. Thank you again for having us tonight. As Heather said, I don't need two mics. Heather said that I am Deb Riley, the special ed administrator here at the high school. We are actually 5 of the 18 members of the Conval leadership team, commonly known as CVLT. As educators, we have recognized, obviously, the importance of staying abreast of current educational best practices and research. We also recognize the importance of reflective practice in our daily lives, in our positions. And so with that, in the fall of 2021, the CVLT scheduling committee had focused on the effectiveness of our current 4x4 schedule for all students. And with that, we asked the essential question back in the fall of 2021. What schedule would best meet the needs of our students, programs, and content areas? A lot of that focus and diving in a little deeper, obviously we're looking at, does our 4x4 current schedule provide optimal learning and engagement for all students? Is the current length of the block meeting the needs of all students? And how would we create a model that best meets those needs? We actually also presented in December of 2022 to the Ed Committee at the time of the school board, and so we'll show you the next slide that will kind of just give you a quick timeline of a brief overview of what we have done since November of 2021 up to that presentation in December. So we researched pros and cons of our current 4x4 schedule. We researched and reviewed various daily bell schedules from many New Hampshire schools, and also researched organizations that focus on the impact of bell schedules. There's actually many bell schedules available. We sent surveys to staff, to students, and parents regarding our current schedule. We've reviewed that preliminary data and responses. We've tabulated that information. We also, in the fall last year, created and met with a parent group. And as that process went along, we agreed as a team that we would bring the parent group back in as we get closer to some of our results.
We have some new board members.
Yep.
Could you explain what a 4x4 schedule means?
It's in our presentation tonight. So the fall of this year, we have actually finalized that list of schools to interview, which we'll go over tonight. And you'll look at each one of those. Principal McKillop actually has sent an email to those principals of those schools asking for some participation with us. And so we've edited and finalized interview questions for certain staff members within those schools, which we'll also look at a little bit tonight. And we are currently scheduling interviews for December and through the end of January 2024. We actually, Amanda will talk about it in a minute, already have two interviews set up for school counseling. Some of the things that we presented in December, we did some analysis of our current 4x4 schedule. We just highlighted tonight for you a couple benefits and a couple drawbacks for your information. One benefit is that classes such as science and music and CTE courses truly benefit from an 80+ minutes of duration for their class. The second big one is that students can earn up to 32 credits in 4 years. We do require 26 credits for graduation. So that allows a lot of opportunity for internships in our communities, which is a lot of our students thrive in. It allows for extended learning opportunities, which we call ELOs. It provides for extra electives that sometimes they can't have. A couple of the drawbacks that are important to know, students can experience some learning gaps of up to a year in subjects where repetition and practice are essential to main skills in that content area depending on the schedule. And probably a big one for some people is that many students struggle maintaining focus and attention for an 80-minute block. Turn it over to...
There are additional benefits and drawbacks to our 4x4 block schedule. And then we've listed them there. I don't think we'll go into detail, but if you have questions about those, we can circle back to this slide.
So as Deb had said earlier, we did dive in depth and researched many schools in New Hampshire that we would want to contact and have participate in interviews with us. We narrowed it down to these 5 schools: Hollis Brookline, Sanborn, Kearsarge, Exeter, and Guilford. We chose these 5 schools because each school has a different bell schedule, and they're all very different than our 4x4 schedule, but also parts of their school profile are similar to our profile, so we kind of looked at that a little bit. And then we plan to interview these schools, as Deb said, over the course of the next few weeks. We have a couple scheduled already. I actually interviewed 2 counselors today, and those interview questions are linked in this presentation that is available to you all. We are going to interview each of the different roles in the school, so the administrators, the counselors, faculty, the special ed faculty, students, and parents eventually. Where our focus right now is on the first 4 roles in the school. And then Carol's going to kind of dive more into the schedules and what they look like and how they differ.
So to explain what a 4x4 block schedule is, which is what Conval High School currently is on, we've actually been on this schedule since 1997. 4x4 means that the students take 4 classes a day, every day for an entire semester. In that time, they earn 1 credit for that course. And then in January, when the semester changes, we switch and the students take a new load of 4 courses. So it's a definite, clearly constructed fall and spring experience. We do have a few courses, namely AP courses such as AP US History, AP Cal Phys, that would go the entire year. The students would earn 2 credits for that. But generally speaking, the students are enrolled for a course for 1 semester. It's a 1 credit thing, and they're in their course. The times for our classes are about 78 minutes long. Our current schedule also allows for our intervention block, which we call TASK, which stands for Teams and Academic Support Centers. So, or Teachers and Academic Support Centers. So that's our time. So it's a little bit of it's an academic break, but it's a little bit more informal time for students to get extra help in that within the school day from their teachers.
It's also important to note we've documented on the bottom of the screen the graduation requirements. So as Deb said before, we have a 26 credit requirement for graduation, a minimum of 26 credits. Our current schedule allows them to get up to 32 credits if they take a full course load all 4 years.
to compare what the 5 schools we chose to also interview and learn a little bit more about. So Sanborn High School has a 6-period day. This classes meet daily for an entire year, and each period is 55 minutes. And they also have a 39-minute intervention block every day. Our intervention period is, I think, 42 minutes. So there's 39 a day. Hollis Brookline has a complex schedule, and these are, the blue is a link to if anyone wanted to dive in and see more details about their schedule. But Hollis Brookline is a complex one. Mondays and Fridays they have a 7-period day, and the periods on Mondays are 51 minutes each. They're a little short on Fridays because they have a delayed opening, so staff can come in and work in professional learning communities before the students arrive. On Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays they have blocks of 66 minutes, 4 of them that rotate. Period 4 appears to meet every day for 53 minutes, and then on also those 3 days they have a 45-minute intervention period. There's 1 day a week where the periods, except for period 4, but the other periods don't meet on 1 day a week during those 3 block days. So it's a complex one, and the blocks rotate when they fall within the school day.
And you'll note that Hollis Brookline has a 23 credit graduation requirement. And just to go back, Sanborn, they currently have a 26 credit requirement for this school year graduating class. They're moving to a 24 credit requirement for the 2025 and 2026 classes. We're interested in learning more about the reasons why when we do the interviews with those schools.
Kearsarge is what's called an AB block schedule. So where ours is 4x4 and the students are in our classes every day, Monday through Friday, an AB block means they alternate. So on an A day, they'll have 4 of their classes, or in this case, they have 7. So they have half of their classes on an A day, and then the other half they have on a B day, and it just alternates day by day. Kearsarge in particular, they do it a little bit differently because there's 7 periods. So Monday, Wednesday is their blue day, and they have 4 90-minute blocks, no intervention periods. Tuesday, Thursdays, they have the yellow day. It has their 3 academic courses, and then the students have intervention periods. They break it, that 90 minutes, into 2 intervention periods on Thursdays and Tuesdays. And then Friday's the green day, which apparently is blue and yellow put together. So they have all 7 45-minute periods. I'm just...
And they have a 23 credit graduation requirement for their school as well.
Exeter is what we call a modified 7-period schedule. So they have Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays is a 7-period day. But Wednesdays and Thursdays are block days. So they would have their 3 of their classes for a block period on Wednesdays. So that would be their odds. Probably their block 1 or period 1, period 3, and period 7 on Wednesdays. Period 2, period 4, and period 6 on Thursdays. Period 5 meets every day, either before or right after lunch. So that's a little bit. It's almost like a skinny within the schedule.
And you'll notice here that per Exeter's website, their graduation requirements list 80 credit requirement. Because this is so significantly different from all the schools that we've researched, we are very interested in learning more about what that means and what that looks like when we do our interviews.
Lastly is Guilford. Guilford has 5 60-minute blocks daily, and they have a 30-minute intervention period daily. Interestingly, they're on a trimester schedule, and so we're curious about what it looks like on a trimester piece and how many courses and credits the students can earn in 1 year if they maximize all of their periods. And the rest is fairly straightforward. Block 1 and 2, followed by their intervention period, block 4, and then block 5 ending at 2:14 in the day.
And they have a 24 credit graduation requirement that they need to meet.
There'll be a quiz on all of these at the end. Okay.
So, so what are we doing next? 4 out of the 5 schools that Mrs. McKillop emailed have responded. I think it's still 4 out of 5 as of that day. And so we are scheduling those interviews in the upcoming weeks prior to the end of January, with the questions that you have within this presentation. We're going to evaluate the data received from those interviews and report back to the Conval leadership team, and then in turn present that information to the entire Conval staff. At that point, we'll determine which schools to visit, get a sense of how the school schedule actually operates on a day-to-day basis in the building, within their culture, within their community, be able to talk more in depth with various stakeholders when we're there. Isn't there another one? Okay, there should be one more slide. That slide says.
There we go.
Oh, there it is. We will share findings with the Conval community members and solicit some feedback. We will then analyze potential impact on changes to our current schedule, students, parents, and staff based on those findings. Our plan is for the committee to provide a recommendation to Dr. Saunders by the spring of 2025. That's where we are. Any questions?
What is the schedules of our participating CTE schools that send and we receive to, and is that part of the dialogue and the discussion for this schedule change?
So all of the schools that we're interviewing send, but don't receive. So we'll be looking at those pieces. The actual schools currently that we have are on a little different schedule, but similar. Kind of hard to explain. You have more of that? Yeah.
I think, and also that step would fall under the potential impact. So knowing that we receive students, particularly Conant, and primarily as our main sender. So what is their schedule? How does that mesh? That is actually in particular when we looked at Exeter and Sanborn, because they send to Seacoast Tech Center. And so that was part of our reason for looking at those to see how they integrate. And we spent some time seeing how their schedules meshed. But that's definitely the impact that we would, a major one we'd have to take into consideration.
Any other board members with questions? And board members, if you could figure out all those schedules, good luck to you. Got my head spinning, and I spent a lot of time with schedules, and some of them are pretty amazing. I don't even know how they pull it off, but thank you. Yes, Erin.
Is that presentation going to end up in our folder as well?
Sure. Easy enough to move over. All right. Any other questions from board members? All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. So we are going to share some handouts, right, Brian? With you regarding the budget, where we are. So we have, as the board directed us to, went back and took what we could and put it into grants. We are awaiting some grant information still, which Brian is going to share. And we need further direction as far as how you would like us to move forward related to trusts, and how you'd like us to move forward on the budget. So there's not a lot of room left in the budget, just so you know.
That's for you.
I don't need this. Okay, Brian, can you share about the what we've taken out of the budget and been able to manage in putting into grants? You start there.
So far, we have moved approximately $400,000 into grants where they're able to be moved. There are some we have not moved into grants yet because we're waiting for approval from the grant itself that we can actually put those items into it. E-rate, anything that qualified under E-rate, we already took out of the budget and moved it over to E-rate. Mark was very helpful in getting that done for us. The issue we have that we need guidance from the board is whether we're going to take some of the expenses we have for this budget and take those funds out of the capital reserve funds in order to take them out of the budget and utilize them. Right now, if you leave them in the budget, and we utilize the trust next year, they stay in the budget. If you decide you want to use trust funds this year to take them off the books completely, you can just do that with a public hearing, and that's what you've done in the past already. So that's over $300,000 that we can actually push over to the trusts across 4 different trust accounts that we have. And we also are hoping to utilize about $300,000 from the Health Maintenance Trust Fund due to the increase in our costs this year for health insurance. So right now, as it stands, before we do anything, we've gotten the operating budget down to about $55,700,268, which works out to about a 3.5% increase over last year. Our revenues are, our total estimated revenues are right around $3 million. That is not including, and that's just holding a placeholder for your fund balance at 500,000. Last year, we actually gave back 1.8 million. So there's a big discrepancy there, or a big difference there, which basically gives us an overall assessment increase of about 8.95% at this point, without anything else put in there that you would guide us to do.
If I can,
Jim?
yeah, if I can make a couple comments about, yes, I'm on now. If I can make a couple comments to both the public and the board about the budget process. We're starting, put out a bunch of information. The first article in the series on the budget, financial article 1, should be going out very soon. We got the introduction is ready. The next one is going to be on the tax bills. Okay, then after that, we'll get into the budget itself and the details, the warrant articles, trust funds and stuff. For the board members, we have a couple of documents that unfortunately we didn't get ready until late this afternoon, right, Brian? One of them was the same document we used last year. I think I sent it to the budget property committee members to get, you guys have it. But the idea is this allows us, as we make decisions on use of trust funds to handle budget things or make decisions on additions to the budgets or reductions to the budget, allow us to do a on-the-fly assessment of what happens to the bottom line district assessment. As Brian mentioned, right now, the district assessment, even though the budget's only going up 3.5%, the district assessment is going to go up like 9%. And one of the primary drivers of that is we don't know how much we're going to be able to return next year. Okay, so there's a lot of moving parts. I don't want to get any more details, but we do have the tools available for everybody to play along with it. What we could do, if we want, Brian, is we could put one of these up as we go through, or I could just read off what happens as we make each decision. I don't know what you guys want to do. Go ahead.
So it is December 5th. You have to provide guidance for us as far as the trust funds, what you want to do, what you want us to do about the remaining grant pieces. Do you want us to remove those? It's throwing the dice a little. I mean, we do have $90,000 in safe grant information that we are waiting to hear back. Once, if those are approved, then we can remove those from the budget. But it is the second or the first meeting in December. By the second meeting in December, you really have to tell us, yes, Kimberly, this is the number, you know, prep it, get everything prepped, because we have the public hearing on the 6th, so 9th, excuse me.
So why don't I propose we do this? Last time, when we met on November 4th, we had the budget books included, is according to my records, 3 or 4 different additions to proposed budgets. And I'll read them off here, and we can kind of go through one at a time and decide what we do about them. We haven't decided whether to put them in or not.
I'm confused as to. Sorry. I'm not entirely positive what you're meaning right now. Could you start over from what I feel like I missed a sentence.
The budget meeting, the budget book we had a base budget of the 55,700,000. Well, actually, it's been changed because Brian talked about some changes. but in addition to the changes Brian talked about, there's 4 items I have listed. One is the ESP clinical coordinator, one's reading interventionist for Antrim, 2 full-time interventionists for GBS, and a full-time technical integration specialist for GBS, totaling about $372,000 we could add to the budget. We haven't talked about those yet. We need to talk about them.
Well, I guess when no one talked about them, we started to work on the assumption that those were not going to be discussed, that they weren't an option.
I understand that.
Okay.
There were not board members, or several board members were not at that meeting. We haven't discussed it since, and we decided at that meeting we were not going to vote on it. So we need to take, I recommend what we do is go down each one of those and decide whether we want to add them or not.
Catherine?
So I'm not sure that everybody has access to the documents that you just sent out to have this discussion.
Yeah,
I
actually, you
didn't
have.
send any documents out.
He
Let me explain what I just said again.
did send.
The budget books that you got on November 4th had these 4 items in there. The only thing I've sent out is a tracking sheet to allow us to do the math on the fly. And I sent those to the budget property members half hour before we got here. You don't have it, but we couldn't put this up on the fly, but the ESP clinical coordinator, can somebody talk about what that one is? I recommend we go through each of these and talk about them. Do we want to add them to the budget?
So we can do that, but just to be really clear, we did not come prepared to do that.
When are we going to talk about them then?
So, well, again, when 6 weeks went by, almost 6 weeks, for a month went by without them being talked about at all, we made the assumption that that meant they would not be added to the budget. I know Ben is here and he can certainly come talk about the ESP clinical coordinator. Ben? But no one came.
Maybe we can short circuit the process. If nobody has has everybody had a chance to look at those potential adders to the budget? We need to go through the process and talk about them, or is we just leave them out? We could decide just leave them all out.
Catherine?
I thank you for coming up, Ben. I almost believe that we should probably start with the suggestions that we have before us before we go to adding things to the
Okay.
budget. Especially given that the administration wasn't fully prepared for those 4 suggestions, given our inaction as a board on those items. I would prefer to work with the information in front of everyone and see where we shake out, and then we can have a discussion either this evening or at a later time, if we feel that we can add those items back in, rather than people working on the fly.
My suggestion is we leave the 4 items out, assume they're not in the budget, work with the figures we have here, and see what that bottom line is going to look like before we even consider looking at 4 items to put back in again.
So
In looking at all the sheets we have in front of us, we have one small sheet with the trust fund information on it and the grant information, and being that we have our capital plan, and that's a spreadsheet that we've all seen and had access to, I would like the board to consider accepting moving some of the expenses into our planned capital, our building trust, equipment trust, special ed and technology trust, for the grand total of $333,571, because it's consistent with the planning that we've been doing over the last several years and how we're going to use those funding sources. And then we had asked the administration to look at the grants and if there was any items that would be eligible in the proposed budget for these grants, and they have found $194,413. I'd like the board to consider moving those expenses into the grants.
That number includes that number I crossed out at the top, the 114,000 for E-rate.
Oh.
And the reason why I crossed that out is because Mark had already moved that into E-rate. So it's already been taken out of the budget. So we've already saved 114,000. So that bottom, that 194 Should be minus 114,000.
Well, it's still it's
yeah.
still significant, and we're utilizing our grants to the, you know, maximum capacity in the most effective and efficient way possible. So those are the first two things,
So
I'd like to make a
let's-
motion we discuss.
Let's go through one at a time then. The building, the 129,750 for the building, proposed building trust, that is out of the budget currently? That's out of the,
No.
is that in these numbers you just handed out today or not?
It is in that budget that I just handed out, yes.
Okay, so they're already reflected in the revised budget numbers.
Just to clarify, they are presently within the budget. So if you say, yes, go and purchase these things now, have a hearing, purchase these things now, that's $129,750.90 that will come out of the budget.
If you decide to do it within the budget, then it stays in the budget and we show it as revenue and it just washes itself out.
Okay,
But we can, when you utilize the trust funds like that, we can purchase them early with your permission and just wipe it off the books as a need. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is, if we're gonna look at these items one at a time, the building is $129,750.90. That would come out of trust funds now, and it would not be reflected in next year's budget.
Correct.
We'd be fulfilling our capital planning that we have going 5 years out at some point in this year or next year, whenever the timing is appropriate for all of these cost items that are already planned for, they're planned expenses. And that's why we have the savings accounts set up.
so the difference between the two approaches is that if we decide we're gonna do this as a trust fund, I think there's no argument with that. We're gonna do that. The question is, if we do it this year, how does it work now?
You would just have your public hearing like you would normally. The public hearing allows us to expend that money in addition to the budget you already have. So
But if-
we would use it and basically it would be off the books for next year. We wouldn't have to worry
But the
about that.
dollars in the budget right now,
Dollar is in next year's proposed budget.
right? So if we approve it, we're not gonna be able to approve it. We'll have to approve it before January 9th in order to change the budget numbers.
Well,
No, you don't have to do it that way, but, you know, you could do it that way, but you don't have to do it. You just have to do it between now and June.
But it has to stay in next year's budget.
No.
Okay,
No, it
you're,
doesn't.
so you're taking it out of this, I got it.
It'll
Yeah.
come out.
If you take the money out now and do
Right.
it now,
Right.
or
So,
before the end
So
of the fiscal
we
year.
would take 129,000 out of this year's, out of the budget, next year's budget,
Proposed budget.
and we would, out of the proposed budget, and it would show up, we would have to have a public hearing before the end of this fiscal year. Take care of it this fiscal year, use trust funds this year and adjust everything. Got it.
Correct.
Catherine?
more because we have members of the public here, and I want them to understand, every year when we bring our budget, our operating budget forward, we also have a capital plan, and we realize that through funding them through fund balance, which is monies that happen to be left over at the end of the year, and we get permission from the voters to fund our trust funds with those dollars, so they're not taxed again. The pluses to that is it allows us to build up these accounts so that we can realize that our plans. The minus is that we have to wait until year end to find out if we have those dollars, so it pushes our capital planning back a little bit. So we're not doing anything that we haven't planned for, and it's not currently in a planned document. We are trying to, now that we have those dollars secured by the voters, we have the opportunity to now realize those plans at a different timetable than if we had to put it in the operating budget and wait until July 1st to realize it. So I just don't want anyone to think we're spending funds that aren't somehow planned for.
So it's, just to piggyback off what Catherine says, the trust funds are designed, the capital plan and the trust funds are actually designed to try and take the peaks and valleys out of the budget. So it's a discussion every year.
So we can go through these items one at a time, building equipment, special ed, and technology, and the board can approve that that's that's what we'll do. Give the administration the go-ahead, and then they can anticipate those reductions.
I think
Board want to go through one item at a time?
I would suggest we just vote on them as a bunch.
Take them as a group?
Yep.
Take them as a group? All right, if I could have a motion to take them as a group?
Sure, I move that we, accept the proposal to move $333,571.90 from the Building Capital Reserve Fund, Equipment, Special Ed, and the Technology Funds, to realize our capital plan.
A second? It's been moved and seconded. Questions?
So that would reduce the budget by 331,572.
333.
Well, whatever the number is, 572. 572, and reduce the budget. And we'd have to make sure we do it this year.
This year, before the end
Right.
of the school year. Yeah,
Okay, I just want to make sure I got it right in my spreadsheet here.
all right. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So did we,
That's one of the documents I didn't have a chance to
right,
distribute to
but
everybody.
I thought
We put a placeholder of
I thought we handed a trust fund summary out at the last meeting, but I could be mistaken,
Well,
Mr. Curlin.
I updated it today to reflect everything,
Okay.
all
So
the changes we've talked about.
I'm happy to let Jim tell you, but they're healthy. They won't be anemic if we do this.
We also have target balances that they don't dip below, so that includes these costs won't dip below our target, so we can continue to realize the capital plan in out years.
It's tough to make a generalization, but there is a document that I will share after this meeting with everybody. And it shows what all the projected transfers in, transfers out, and the targeted balances, the recommended warrant articles, everything's on one sheet of paper. We just don't have time to, I think what we're doing tonight is we're gonna give the administration direction on how to change the numbers, and we'll come back and vote on the budget in entirety later. Right? So everybody's gonna have a chance to look at those numbers after they change and approve them later. We're not necessarily approving the budget tonight. We can always, right? Everybody follow that? Okay. That makes it an easier discussion. Right.
So we have a motion and we've had a second. Any other questions for board? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? All right.
By the way, that reduced the operational budget from a 3.5% increase to 2.88% increase. So we're heading in the right direction.
So the second part of this is grants. Ryan, could you give us the grand total with the correction on the E-rate? What would that bottom line then be?
$80,013.
80,000.
80013,
Yes,
and that would work the same way as the other one did.
correct.
So basically, we're talking about the same thing.
So I would like to make a motion that we maximize our grant dollars. Oh, before I go, should I go?
Yeah.
Oh, and that we accept the proposal for $83,013 for the purpose of using our grant dollars.
Okay, a second,
It's 80, oh, I thought that was a 4. I'm sorry, $80,013. I apologize, Brenda. $80,013. Let's cross that.
Could you add to the end of your motion, as long as it's approved?
As long as
Because-
they're eligible expenditures.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank. We are waiting.
it's been seconded, Brenda, Mike seconded. All right, questions?
That will further reduce the increase in the budget to 2.7% over last year, operational budget.
Any other questions? Catherine?
I have another item for the board to consider. We don't have to vote on it this evening. It's not in front of us. Oh, we didn't vote yet? Oh.
No. Get a motion in a second. Questions? Seeing none. All those in favor of using grant funds at $830,013, I believe that.
80,000.
80,000. Could I make it more and then we just fantasize a little here? Okay. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions. All right, Superintendent.
Just clarification, if the $80,013 does not qualify, end up being qualifying expenses for a variety of reasons, I just need clarification, those go back in the budget?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Catherine.
One other motion I'd like the board to consider, and it doesn't have to be this evening, is that our health savings account, our capital reserve fund, is for the purpose of offsetting spikes and peaks into our, when we have health insurance rate increases, and we know we have a 25% rate increase. I believe the reserve fund has over $550,000 in it. I would like the board to consider using all of those dollars and then creating a warrant article for fund balance to refund it at 375 to 400,000 in the subsequent years, so that we can avoid, again, absorb some of that cost, and that is what the fund was created and intended for. So it doesn't have to be voted on this evening. It's just something that we really should consider, so that we can bring some of those items into the budget that were proposed at our original hearing, but we haven't been able to consider.
So before we get a motion, can I make a couple comments? The $300,000 isn't the way that would be handled, according to Brian, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, is that would actually be $300,000 we would move from the health maintenance trust to the budget. We wouldn't reduce the budget. We'd add revenue. Okay. So I was I going to say, I want to recommend that second half of your thing was, you said two pieces to it.
That we use the entire balance of the fund, basically, and that we replenish it with fund balance as our first warrant article. It's more than 300,000, but, so there would be a reduction in the budget plus a wash in the sense of the items that we might be able to consider and deliberate bringing in that we were requested to consider from the administration.
If we were to do that, the current balance as of November 30th in the health maintenance trust is $590,813,000. That would wipe it down to nothing.
I think that's what Catherine's saying. But she also said if we approve that, it wipes it clean. When we go to the warrant for next year, we would make that the first item that would get funds from the fund balance put back in again. It'd be the number one.
That reminded me of the comment I want to make. I would suggest we not tie the dollar amount to replenish with that motion. Let's do them two pieces. We do have to look at all the trust fund and warrant articles later whenever you have all these documents in front of them.
Yes, this was just something that I felt like I should bring forward now, so that we can have all the documents ready, so we can have this discussion, because when we create the warrant, and which we have to do, and fund the trust funds, I wanted everyone to have this kind of thought in the back of their head that we could consider using, maybe not all 590,000, because there's been some interest, but certainly a much more significant portion than the 300, to not only reduce the increase, and our most important, benefit of health insurance for our staff, but also for the taxpayers, and then refund it as the first warrant article. And we had no other large items. Well, because we also, and we have a teacher's contract to consider, which we would like to pass as well. So we really need the budget to give us the most, be as flexible as possible, so that we can make sure that the taxpayers will also support the teacher's contract, which will be coming forward as well.
Well, if we're gonna go aggressive,
one voice, please.
I think if we're gonna go aggressive, I would suggest we not go all of it, because we don't know what's gonna happen to the income between now and the end of the year. Stock market could take a dive, could lose. So I would suggest, what about $500,000 for discussion purposes? Okay.
But if we take the money from the health trust, that's just health money. We're not going to be able to use that for anything else.
No, I understand.
So by taking it all now, helps us reduce the budget, which we want to do, and we then make it the number one warrant article when we put the warrant out for next year and replenish it. And we could decide whether to go back to we have 500 there, or bring back 327. We could decide what that number looks like then. So I think what Catherine's talking about it's good timing and it's a good thing to do. I don't know that we need more time to think about this. If board members do, we can delay it. But I think it helps us now to move forward with the budget. Jim?
The only the point I'm trying to make is let's agree on a number, the 500,000 now. Let's not talk about the priority and how much to put back in the warrant article later. Keep those separate discussions. Keep in mind, obviously.
Yeah, it can be a separate discussion when we get
Everybody
there.
has the whole sheet and all the information in front of them. So for the budget purposes, Brian's gonna add if we approve this, Brian will add $500,000 to the estimated revenues in the budget.
Unlike what we just voted on, the trust funds, this is gonna happen in the next fiscal year.
Right.
Not this fiscal year.
And we can determine how much we want to put back in at some date. But I think now, unless board members have objections, I think this is a good thing for us to do now to work getting this budget finalized. So questions from board members about moving forward, because then I'll ask Catherine for a motion. All right, let's have a motion and then a second.
I move that we allocate $500,000 from our health savings capital reserve fund for the purpose of offsetting the health insurance increase in the next fiscal year.
Second? It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions. All right, thank you. I think it's a brilliant idea. Thank you, Catherine. What else will you need from us?
No, that's good for now. We are going to bring you the budget number back again next meeting, and that will be, we will try and see if we have any additional savings. If there's any other direction that you want to give us, now is the time to do that. Again, we brought a pretty trim budget to you. We haven't added a lot to the budget. Certainly, if you want to hear about those 4 positions, we can be prepared to do that next time. I just need to know what your pleasure is.
Board members, any requests on the 4 positions? Right now, they're not in the budget. We have not voted to put them in. Mike?
Yes, I'd like to hear about them at the next meeting.
Okay. Any thumbs up for board members? You want to hear about those 4 positions again?
Could we get them prioritized, so in case that the money, we were
Yep.
not gonna be, thank you.
Yep. Okay, we'll do that. All right. Old business, consolidation and configuration, is that? Okay. Alan?
I'd like to start at the end on consolidation, reconfiguration. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the time they've taken to speak on the public comment. But what I want to make sure is that folks do not lose sight of the fact that what the board does is a recommendation. It is not cast in concrete. There is a vote that comes up in the beginning of March, which the whole community votes on, as to whether to accept the recommendation or not. So we do not actually say, you will do this. The community has to vote. It's a 2/3 vote that they have to do in March. We are constrained by a couple of things, which is, by statute, we have to have a warrant article out by the beginning of January. Well, basically all the warrant articles, but for consolidation and reconfiguration, we have to have a warrant article ready by January. So that's one of the constraints we have. And we started this project back in, what everybody said, let me go through this. What everybody said is accurate. And we started this project back in June. And it is on a quick track, but not too quick. We have a lot of information that has been gathered, and there's a lot of activity coming up. But again, do not forget, you have the final say as to whether we do anything or not. We have the community forum coming up. We have the board vote coming up to determine what the warrant article is going to say. Would you produce a warrant article? So, and we have a lot of communications coming up. Today, the communication came out in the mail to a lot of people as to where we're going with this. And we also have the website modified so that people can see exactly how this whole project is proceeding. I wanted to make sure everybody was aware or hasn't lost track that you vote on this thing in the beginning of March. And that's a yay or no vote. That's what I think. That helps.
Board members, any questions? Alan, Bill?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Bill?
Two-thirds of the entire district.
Dan?
I don't know if you mentioned this, Alan, but a lot of the data that Prismatic presented is on our website now.
Yes.
It's up there now. Okay, and the only other thing I'd like to say is a lot of us has worked very hard on this project, and no one has worked harder on this than Alan. He has done the best he can to communicate, to be transparent, to get the word out. And I think he's done a fantastic job. And thank you, Alan, as we get knee deep into as we're coming down the stretch here on this. Thank you.
I appreciate that. But there has been a lot of people that have worked on this. Thank you.
There are a lot of people that have worked very hard, but no one, I'll say it again, no one has worked harder than you.
Yeah.
I agree with that also. Thank you, Dan.
But yes, I'll let it go.
All right, new business. We have some gifts. Dublin Consolidated School requests authorization to accept from the Dublin Community Foundation a gift of $500 or donation of $500 for the purpose of purchasing winter equipment. Could I have a motion to accept that?
And seconded with appreciation.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions, very good. A second request, Dublin Consolidated School requests the authorization to accept from the Dublin Community Foundation a gift or donation of $525 for the purpose of Marty Kelly as a presenter. Can I have a motion?
Second with appreciation again from the, I can't even see who gave it.
The
Dublin Community Foundation. Thank you.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions, very good. Conville High School requests authorization to accept from the Harris Center for Conservation Education a gift or donation of $1,000 for the purpose of offsetting the cost of Belize tropical ecology trip for participating students.
Second with thanks to the Harris Center for Conservation Education.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions, very good. Peterborough Elementary School requests the authorization to accept from the Peterborough Elementary School PTO the gift or donation of $1,100 for the purpose of science enrichment activity event provided by the Blue Ocean Society for Maritime Conservation. Can I have a motion? It's been moved.
And with gratitude, I second that to the PES PTO.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Abstentions, thank you. This is the part of our agenda where we have a second opportunity for the public to speak to the board. Are there other members? Yes.
Sorry, not. Doug Sutherland Hancock from Hancock. I didn't speak last time and people yelled at me, so I'm like, I'm going to say something this time. Sorry, yeah. See what was happening now. 1 second. Nope. There it is. Okay. I wondered about how I should bring this up, and what I realize is like, I'm just going to say it. My daughter experienced an incident of racism. This racism most likely comes from a lack of education, and or copying what they see or hear in social media. Without going into details, I want to thank the school teachers, the administrators, and the superintendent's office for addressing this immediately. However, I would encourage the students, teachers, families, and community leaders to speak up and not wait until a member of a marginalized community speaks up. If you are offended by a racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic, etc. language from anyone, we need you to speak up. If you're not a part of that community, we need you to speak up. And speak up on your behalf because you are offended, because that is not how this community is. I am proud of my daughter for speaking up. It was really hard for her. It should not be her or my family's cross to bear. I can assume this happens a lot in this community. It will continue to happen if this community sits back because it doesn't affect you. Let this be a community where that we say we are. Again, thank you to GBS for supporting my child and the other children. We have a journey ahead of us, all of us in this community. It won't end because my child stood up. It will end because all of us stand up. Thank you.
You got an extra 15 seconds anyway, Doug. Anyone else? Certainly.
Denise from Peterborough. I just wanted to clarify why I picked the main case study. They were able to change school start time across multiple districts that shared vocational programs with no increase in busing costs, and with the help of Start School Later and local physicians, it only took 8 months to implement after first formal school board discussion. I highly suggest checking out startschoollater.net to find more success stories like this and loads of resources for implementation. Many other regions have overcome the obstacles to change, and we can too. Please don't let this issue get lost amongst the grander consolidation plans. Working together, I'm confident we can come up with a creative solution that reduces the burden of early start times for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members?
Kimberly Markham from Dublin again. I want to start by saying that I appreciate Dan saying how much time Alan has put into this, and I know that all of you put a lot of time into what you do for the betterment of our community. So when I feel impassioned and protective about our town and school, I don't want that to come across as not being appreciative that you are trying to come up with good solutions for our district, for our students. So I appreciate that. I've been looking through some of the data just now on the website, in the report, and I guess I'm just feeling like, you know, there's 403 pages. That's a lot of information, and it just seems like a really short amount of time to really give people time that want to read it all, for you all to read it all, to process the information. I understand the whole 2/3 majority situation, that it is going before the voters in the district, but that's a lot of information. I guess I just feel like, although this has been something that's been talked about for years and years, while we have all this work that Prismatic has done, taking time to read the report thoroughly, give members of the community time to read it thoroughly. It's a really busy time of year. I know I'm not a genius saying that. We all feel it. It's a really busy time of year to add in some really important reading So thank you for what you do for our community, and that's all.
Thank you. Any other members? All right, seeing none. We have any? All right, we have to go into non-public, so if I could have a motion on RSA 91-A:3, Roman 2 to go to non-public. Dick?